I'm Sarah, 28, and I thought I knew my family until 3 weeks ago when my phone exploded with 57 missed calls from my mom. I was sipping a Mai Tai on Waikiki Beach, finally enjoying the Hawaiian vacation I'd booked, after my brother told me I didn't deserve to attend his engagement party. What started as a petty family argument about wedding guest lists had just uncovered a 15-year lie that would destroy everything we thought we knew about loyalty, blood, and the devastating price of keeping family secrets. Before I dive into how one beach vacation became the catalyst for the biggest family scandal in our history, tell me, where are you watching from? Have you ever had that moment when your whole world shifts and nothing is what it seems? Hit that like button if you've ever felt betrayed by the people you trusted most, and don't forget to subscribe because this story gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you won't see this ending coming. Let me take you back to where this all started. The Mitchell family, had always prided ourselves on being tight-knit. My parents, Robert and Linda, my older brother Jake, and me. We lived in suburban Denver, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows each other's business and Sunday dinners are sacred. Dad worked construction, Mom was a school secretary, and we weren't rich but we were solid. Or so I thought. Jake had always been the golden child. 3 years older, captain of his high school football team, full scholarship to Colorado State. I was the artsy one, community theater creative writing, the daughter who chose English literature over business because I wanted to find myself. Classic middle-class family dynamic, right? Jake got engaged to his college sweetheart Rebecca last Christmas. They'd been together 6 years and honestly I adored her. She was sweet, funny, and somehow managed to make Jake less of an entitled ass. The engagement party was set for March 15th at the country club. Nothing too fancy, just family and close friends. I'd already bought a dress, arranged time off from my job at the marketing firm, and even offered to help with decorations. That's why Jake's phone call hit me like a freight train. "Sarah, we need to talk," he'd said, his voice cold in that way. That meant he'd already made up his mind about something. "Rebecca and I have been discussing the guest list and we think it's better if you don't come to the engagement party." I literally laughed. I thought he was joking. "What do you mean I don't come? I'm your sister. You're always causing drama, Sarah. Remember Thanksgiving when you got into it with Uncle Mike about politics? Or last Easter when you made that comment about Rebecca's mother's cooking? We want this to be perfect, and honestly you have a way of making everything about yourself." The accusations stung because they weren't entirely untrue, but they weren't the whole truth either. Yes, I'd argued with Uncle Mike, but he'd been spouting racist garbage. Yes, I'd made a comment about Rebecca's mom's dry turkey, but it was a joke that everyone laughed at, including Rebecca's mom. Jake was rewriting history to fit whatever narrative he'd constructed in his head. "Jake, that's ridiculous. I'm not some family pariah. Mom and Dad will never go for this." Actually, they agree with me. His words felt like ice water in my veins. "Mom said you've been going through a difficult phase since your breakup with David, and maybe some space would be good for everyone." My breakup with David had been 8 months ago and it was mutual. We'd grown apart, and I'd handled it like an adult. But somehow, Jake had turned my perfectly normal single life into evidence of my instability. "You're really going to exclude your sister from your engagement party because I'm not married?" I was getting angry now, and when I get angry my voice gets sharp. "That's incredibly shallow even for you, Jake." "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't just accept feedback without turning it into an attack. Rebecca's whole family will be there and I need to know you won't embarrass us." That word, us, hit differently. He'd already separated me from the family unit. I wasn't part of us anymore. I hung up and immediately called Mom. Surely she'd see how insane this was. "Oh, honey," Mom's voice was tired, defeated. "Jake's just nervous about the party. You know how important this is to him. Maybe it would be easier if you just took a little vacation that weekend. You've been working so hard." Even my own mother was choosing my brother over me, and she was trying to make it sound like a gift. That night I booked the most expensive vacation I could afford, 5 days in Hawaii. If my family wanted me gone, I'd go in style. I maxed out my credit card on a beachfront hotel in Honolulu and told myself I didn't care. But I did care. I cared so much it physically hurt. The days leading up to my departure were weird. Dad called once, awkward and brief, asking if I was okay with everything. I told him I was fine, that I was looking forward to Hawaii. What else could I say? That his son had convinced him his daughter was such a problem that she couldn't be trusted at a family celebration. Jake didn't call at all. Hawaii was supposed to be my escape, but for the first 2 days I was miserable. I kept imagining the engagement party, Rebecca in whatever gorgeous dress she'd chosen, Jake playing the perfect host, my parents smiling and taking photos of their son's happiness, photos I wouldn't be in. Memories being made without me. I tried to lose myself in the vacation. I went snorkeling at Hanauma Bay, took a helicopter tour over active volcanoes, ate way too much poke and shaved ice. The hotel was beautiful, one of those places where they put orchids on your pillow and the balcony overlooked the ocean. I posted pictures on Instagram making sure I looked like I was having the time of my life. Petty, absolutely, but sometimes petty is all you've got. On day 3 something shifted. I was lying on the beach finally starting to relax when I struck up a conversation with the woman next to me. Elena was probably 60 with silver hair and laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. She was reading a murder mystery, and we got to talking about books, then life, then family. You seem like you're carrying something heavy, she said in that direct way that strangers sometimes can when you're far from home. I found myself telling her everything. The engagement party, Jake's accusations, my parents' betrayal, all of it. Elena listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions that made me think harder about the situation. You know what strikes me, she said when I finished. This doesn't sound like it's really about you causing drama. This sounds like someone else's guilt being projected onto you. What do you mean? In my experience, when someone goes to extreme lengths to exclude a family member from important events, it's usually because that person represents a threat to something they're trying to hide. What could you possibly threaten by being at an engagement party? The question stuck with me as I walked back to my hotel that evening. What was I threatening? I'd always been supportive of Jake and Rebecca. I genuinely liked Rebecca. I'd never caused any real drama at family events beyond normal sibling banter, so why was Jake so desperate to keep me away? That night I called my college roommate Amy, who'd always been brutally honest with me. Amy, be real with me. Am I actually a drama-causing nightmare that ruins family events? Amy laughed. Sarah, you're literally the most diplomatic person I know. You're the one who always plays peacekeeper when our friend group fights. Remember when you mediated that whole thing between Jessica and Morgan last year? You're not a drama causer. You're a problem solver. Then why would Jake say all those things? I don't know, but it sounds like he's trying really hard to convince everyone, including himself, that you're the problem. Question is, what's he trying to distract from? Amy's words echoed Elena's. 2 different people, same observation. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. I decided to enjoy my last 2 days in Hawaii and worry about family drama when I got home. I booked a sunset dinner cruise, spent hours at the spa, and actually started to feel human again. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about Jake or the engagement party or what was wrong with me. That peace lasted until Saturday night, the night of the engagement party I wasn't invited to. I was having dinner alone at a beautiful restaurant overlooking Diamond Head, finally feeling okay about everything when my phone started buzzing. First, it was a text from Rebecca. Sarah, please call me. Something's happened. Then my dad, honey, we need to talk. Then Mom, Sarah, where are you? Call home immediately. Then Amy, girl, your brother is blowing up my phone looking for you. What the hell happened? By the time I made it back to my hotel room, I had 57 missed calls and 32 text messages. My phone was practically smoking. Whatever had happened at that engagement party, it was big enough to make my family forget they'd banished me in the first place. I called Rebecca first, my heart hammering as the phone rang. When she answered, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Sarah, thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm in Hawaii. Remember? You guys didn't want me at the party. What's going on? What happened? Your aunt showed up. Rebecca sobbed. Your dad's sister, Patricia. She was drunk, and she started talking about things from when you and Jake were kids. She said things, Sarah. Terrible things about your family, about Jake. My blood went cold. Aunt Patricia was Dad's older sister, the one who'd moved to California 20 years ago after some falling out with the family. We rarely talked about her, and she never came to family events. I hadn't seen her since I was maybe 8 years old. What kind of things she said Jake wasn't. She said he wasn't really your brother. That your parents lied about it for years. She was screaming about how unfair it was that everyone pretended like nothing happened while she got exiled for telling the truth. She said your dad made her swear never to tell, but she couldn't watch them celebrate Jake's happiness when it was built on lies. The hotel room started spinning. Rebecca, slow down. What exactly did she say about Jake? She said he wasn't your dad's son. That your mom had an affair and got pregnant, and your dad decided to raise Jake as his own, but Patricia knew the truth. She said the reason they moved away from their hometown when you were little was because everyone there knew the real story. This couldn't be real. Jake had dad's nose, dad's stubbornness, dad's love of football. How could he not be dad's biological son? There's more, Rebecca whispered. She said the reason Jake always resented you was because you were the real child and he knew it somehow. She said your parents always favored you without realizing it, and Jake grew up feeling like he had to prove he belonged. Suddenly, 28 years of family dynamics started making horrible sense. Jake's desperate need to be perfect. His resentment when I got good grades effortlessly while he struggled. The way mom and dad sometimes looked at him with a kind of careful love, like they were being extra gentle. The weird tension whenever anyone mentioned our early childhood. And now his desperate need to exclude me from his engagement party. Was he afraid I might somehow threaten his place in the family? Or was he just so filled with misplaced anger that he couldn't stand to share important moments with the daughter who belonged there naturally? Where is everyone now? I asked, my voice barely working. Your parents left right after Patricia's outburst. Jake locked himself in the bathroom and won't come out. Half the guests left and the other half are standing around whispering. Sarah, it was awful. But here's what I realized sitting in that hotel room with the sound of Hawaiian waves in the background. This wasn't about DNA or biology or who belonged where. This was about 28 years of lies, manipulation, and scapegoating. This was about a family that chose to protect one person's feelings at the expense of everyone else's truth. And I was done being the person who got sacrificed to keep everyone else comfortable. Part of me was almost relieved to finally understand why my brother had spent our entire lives treating me like an inconvenience he had to tolerate. And that relief made me feel like a terrible person. Right then, my phone started ringing again. Mom, I have to go, I told Rebecca. I'll call you back. Sarah, are you coming home? I looked out at the Hawaiian sunset at the paradise I'd found, while my family imploded 3,000 miles away. I don't know. Mom's voice was shaky when I answered. Sarah, honey, where are you? We need you to come home. Now you need me. 3 days ago you thought I should take a vacation because Jake couldn't handle my presence. Don't be like that. This is serious. Mom, is it true? About Jake? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Mom whispered, "Who told you?" And just like that, I knew it was all true. My brother wasn't my father's son. My family had been living a lie for 28 years. And somehow I'd been punished for being the legitimate child while Jake got to be the golden boy who everyone protected. The irony was staggering. I'd been excluded from Jake's engagement party for being a drama-causing problem child, when the real drama, the real family secret, had nothing to do with me at all. But here's what I realized sitting in that hotel room with the sound of Hawaiian waves in the background. This wasn't about DNA or biology or who belonged where. This was about 28 years of lies, manipulation, and scapegoating. This was about a family that chose to protect one person's feelings at the expense of everyone else's truth. And I was done being the person who got sacrificed to keep everyone else comfortable. But before I could figure out what that meant, I had to go home and face the wreckage of the engagement party I'd been too problematic to attend. The engagement party where the real family drama had finally exploded in the most public way possible. The universe has a sense of humor, and sometimes karma doesn't just come back around, it comes back with interest, witnesses, and perfect timing. I caught the first flight back to Denver, my mind racing the entire 6 hours. The woman next to me kept asking if I was okay because I was alternating between staring out the window and frantically taking notes on my phone. I was trying to piece together 28 years of subtle signs I'd missed, conversations that suddenly made sense, and moments when my parents had shared looks I'd never understood. But before I could figure out what that meant, I had to go home and face the wreckage of the engagement party I'd been too problematic to attend. The engagement party where the real family drama had finally exploded in the most public way possible. The universe has a sense of humor, and sometimes karma doesn't just come back around, it comes back with interest, witnesses, and perfect timing. He's my son in every way that matters. I raised him, I love him, I taught him how to ride a bike and throw a football. Biology doesn't change that. But you never told him. We thought it was better if he never knew. We moved here when your mom was pregnant with you because we wanted a fresh start. Jake was only 3. He didn't remember our old town or the circumstances of his birth. We thought we could just be a normal family. Whose idea was it to keep it secret? Dad's shoulders sagged. Mine. Your mother wanted to tell him when he turned 18, but I convinced her it would only hurt him. He was thriving, he felt secure, he had friends and sports and a life here. I thought we could take the secret to our graves. What about me? Did I have a right to know I was being treated differently because of something I didn't even understand? That's when Dad finally looked at me and I saw tears in his eyes. Were you treated differently? I wanted to lie to make him feel better, but I was exhausted from being the family's emotional caretaker. Yes, Dad, Jake could do no wrong and I could never do enough right. You guys bent over backwards to make him feel special while holding me to impossible standards. I spent my whole childhood wondering why my brother got unconditional love while mine came with conditions. We never meant for that to happen. But it did happen. And then when I started questioning family dynamics or pointing out unfairness, I became the difficult one. The drama causer. The one who couldn't just go along to get along. Dad started crying then, and I felt that familiar urge to comfort him, to take care of everyone else's feelings. But this time I didn't. This time I let him sit with the consequences of his choices. When we got home, Mom was in the kitchen stress cleaning. She hugged me like I'd been gone for years instead of days, and I could feel her shaking. Where's Jake? I asked. He went to Rebecca's parents' house. He hasn't been home since the party. Sarah, he's devastated. He feels like his whole life has been a lie. What about Rebecca? She's standing by him, but her family. And they're asking questions. About what else we might have lied about, whether Jake and Rebecca should postpone the wedding until they work through this. Part of me felt bad for Rebecca. She'd gotten engaged expecting one family dynamic, and suddenly discovered she was marrying into something completely different. But part of me was also angry that Jake's pain was still taking priority over everyone else's. What did Patricia say exactly? I needed to hear the whole story. Mom sat down heavily at the kitchen table. She showed up drunk about 2 hours into the party. At first she was just loud and inappropriate, telling embarrassing stories about your dad when they were kids. But then she saw Jake giving a toast about family and tradition, and how grateful he was to be raised with such strong values, and she snapped. She started yelling about hypocrisy and lies, and how the whole family was built on deception. She said Jake wasn't Robert's son, that I'd had an affair with a man named Marcus who lived in our old neighborhood. She said everyone in town knew, and that's why we really moved. Not for your dad's job opportunity like we always said. The name Marcus hit me like a physical blow. I remembered Mom mentioning a Marcus once or twice over the years, always in passing, always with a strange look on her face. A family friend from the old neighborhood who she'd lost touch with. Is he alive? Mom nodded. He lives in Phoenix. He's married, has 2 daughters. He doesn't know about Jake. He doesn't know he has a son. It was complicated, Sarah. I was young and confused, and Robert was so good to me, so willing to raise another man's child. I thought it was better for everyone if we just started over. I was starting to understand the scope of this lie. It wasn't just Jake who'd been deceived. There was a man in Phoenix who had no idea he had a 28-year-old son. There were 2 girls who didn't know they had a half-brother. There was an entire other family that had been written out of the story. Does Jake know about Marcus? Patricia told him everything, including Marcus's last name and the city where he lives. That's when I realized how much worse this was going to get. Jake, feeling betrayed and desperate for truth, now had the information he needed to contact his biological father. A man who might not want anything to do with the son he never knew existed. Or worse, a man who might welcome Jake with open arms and give him the unconditional acceptance he'd always craved, making our family feel even more like a consolation prize. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "We need to talk. All of us. Tomorrow at noon." After 28 years of family meetings where I was lectured about my attitude and behavior, we were finally going to have a family meeting about the lies that had shaped all our lives. But I had 24 hours to decide whether I wanted to participate in another conversation centered around protecting Jake's feelings, or whether I was ready to demand some truth and accountability for myself. The family meeting was scheduled for noon at Mom and Dad's house, but Jake showed up at my apartment at 10 a.m. I was still in my pajamas, drinking coffee and trying to psych myself up for what was coming. When I opened the door, he looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past week. "Can I come in?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him he'd lost the right to show up uninvited when he'd decided I wasn't worthy of his engagement party. But he looked so broken that my old people-pleasing instincts kicked in. "5 minutes, Jake." He sat on my couch and put his head in his hands. I contacted him. Marcus. I found him on Facebook and sent him a message. "What did you say?" I told him who I was and asked if he'd known my mother 29 years ago. He called me within an hour. Jake looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Sarah, he's been wondering about me my entire life. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of." "What do you mean?" He said Mom told him she was pregnant, but then she disappeared. He tried to find her for months, but this was before social media and she'd moved out of state. He never knew what happened to the baby. To me. He's been carrying that guilt for almost 30 years, wondering if he had a child somewhere that he'd abandoned. I felt a stab of sympathy for Marcus, which complicated my anger toward my parents. They hadn't just lied to Jake and me, they'd left a man believing he might be a deadbeat father. "He wants to meet me," Jake continued. "He lives in Phoenix with his wife Carol. They have 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie, my half-sisters. He showed them my picture and told them about me, and they want to meet me too." "How do you feel about that?" "Confused as hell. I spent my whole life trying to be the perfect son for Dad, trying to earn love I thought I had to work for. And it turns out there's this whole other family that would have just loved me automatically." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Jake, Dad does love you automatically. Biology doesn't change 28 years of being your father. But it explains everything, doesn't it? Why I never felt like I quite fit. Why you seemed to belong so effortlessly while I had to constantly prove myself. Why I always felt like there was something wrong with me." This was the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. The moment when Jake finally understood the family dynamics that had shaped both our lives. But I was surprised by what came out of my mouth. "Jake, there was never anything wrong with you. There was something wrong with how Mom and Dad handled this situation, but you were never the problem. I treated you terribly growing up. I was so resentful and I didn't even understand why. You were a kid dealing with feelings you couldn't name. But Jake, you're not a kid anymore. The way you handled the engagement party, the way you convinced our parents, I was too problematic to attend your celebration. That was adult Jake making adult choices." He flinched. "I know. I was so afraid that somehow you'd figure it out, or that something would happen to make me feel even more like an outsider. I thought if I could just have one perfect family moment where I was clearly the center of attention. You threw me under the bus to protect your own insecurity." "Yes. And I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Sarah." It was the first real apology I'd ever gotten from him, and it caught me off guard. What happens now, I don't know. Rebecca and I are postponing the wedding until I figure out who I am. I'm flying to Phoenix next weekend to meet Marcus and his family, and I need to figure out how to have a relationship with Dad after this. "What about Mom?" "I'm angry at her too, but differently. She was barely older than I am now when all this happened. Dad was the one who insisted on the lies. We sat in silence for a few minutes, then Jake said something that surprised me. I called Amy yesterday, your college roommate. I wanted to ask her if you really were as dramatic and problematic as I'd convinced myself you were. My heart stopped. What did she say? She laughed at me. She said you were literally the most emotionally stable person in your friend group. She said you were the one everyone came to for advice because you saw situations clearly and didn't take sides based on personal loyalty. Jake. She said the only time she'd ever seen you cause drama was when you stood up to people who were being unfair or dishonest. She said you had a reputation for calling out bullshit which made some people uncomfortable, but that you were never wrong. Amy, bless her heart, had apparently given my brother a reality check I'd never been able to deliver myself. I need to ask you something, Jake said. And I need you to be honest. How much damage did I do to you, to your relationship with Mom and Dad, to your sense of belonging in this family? I thought about lying, about minimizing the damage to protect his feelings the way I'd been trained to do my entire life. But I'd spent 5 days in Hawaii learning what it felt like to prioritize my own emotional well-being, and I wasn't ready to give that up. A lot, Jake. You convinced our parents that I was the family problem, which made me question my own perceptions and reactions to things. You made me feel like I had to earn my place in this family while you got to just exist in it. You taught me that my feelings and experiences mattered less than keeping everyone else comfortable. He absorbed this like a physical blow. How do I fix it? I don't know if you can. But you can start by telling Mom and Dad the truth about what really happened with the engagement party. You can stop letting me be the family scapegoat. And you can figure out how to have relationships with both your fathers without making the rest of us walk on eggshells to protect your feelings. What if I can't figure it out? Then that's your work to do, Jake. But it's not my job to make it easier for you anymore. When he left, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Not hope that everything would magically be fixed, but hope that maybe finally we could start dealing with reality instead of the careful lies that had shaped our family for so long. The noon family meeting was going to be different. For the first time in my life, I was going to that table as Sarah, not as Jake's sister or the family problem solver or the daughter who had to be extra good to compensate for everyone else's chaos. I was going as myself, and I was going to tell the truth. The family meeting was supposed to be about moving forward, but it turned into the reckoning we should have had years ago. Dad started with his usual approach, trying to manage everyone's emotions and find a solution that would make everyone comfortable. But I'd spent 6 months in therapy after my breakup with David, learning about boundaries and healthy communication, and I wasn't letting him steer this conversation. Before we talk about fixing anything, I said I need some questions answered. Mom and Dad exchanged that look they'd been sharing my entire life. The one that said they needed to protect someone from uncomfortable truths. Usually that someone was Jake, but today it might be me. What questions? Mom asked carefully. Did you know that excluding me from family events and treating my reactions to unfairness as drama was damaging to me? The directness of the question seemed to catch them off guard. Dad started to deflect. Sarah, we always loved you equally. That's not what I asked. I asked if you knew you were hurting me. Mom answered first. Sometimes I wondered if we were being too hard on you. But Jake always seemed so sensitive to criticism, and you seemed so strong and capable of handling things. So, you sacrificed my emotional well-being to protect his? Why? We were trying to keep the family stable, Dad said defensively. For who? Because it wasn't stable for me. I spent my childhood walking on eggshells trying to figure out why I couldn't seem to earn the same unconditional acceptance Jake got. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Jake, who'd been quiet since arriving, finally spoke up. There was something fundamentally wrong, but it wasn't with you. It was with all of us. We built this whole family dynamic around protecting a lie, and Sarah got hurt because she was the only one telling the truth. This was not the Jake I'd grown up with. This Jake was taking responsibility instead of deflecting blame. What do you mean? Dad asked. I mean, Sarah always called out inconsistencies and unfairness because she has good instincts about people and situations. But instead of listening to her, we labeled her as difficult because her observations threatened the fake equilibrium we were trying to maintain. I felt tears starting, but not sad tears. Vindicated tears. For the first time in my life, someone in my family was acknowledging that my perceptions had been accurate. Remember when Sarah questioned why I got a car for my 16th birthday, but she had to save up and buy her own? Jake continued. She said it felt like different rules for different kids. You guys told her she was being ungrateful and materialistic, but she wasn't wrong. You did treat us differently and she deserved an explanation.
Mom was crying now. We thought we were protecting everyone.
You were protecting your own discomfort with the situation you'd created, I said more gently than I'd expected. I understand why you made the choices you made when Jake was little. But when I started asking questions as a teenager and young adult, you had chances to tell the truth or at least acknowledge that family dynamics were complicated. Instead, you made me the problem. What do you need from us now? Dad asked, and I could see him genuinely trying to understand. I need you to tell our extended family that I wasn't actually too problematic to attend the engagement party. I need you to acknowledge that Jake's exclusion of me was based on his own insecurities, not my behavior. And I need you to stop expecting me to manage everyone else's feelings at the expense of my own. Done, Dad said immediately. I also need you to understand that I'm probably going to need some time and space to figure out how I fit into this family now that we're dealing with reality instead of lies. This scared them more than my anger had. What does that mean? Mom asked. It means I'm not going to automatically show up to every family dinner and pretend everything is fine. It means I might not be available to mediate between Jake and you guys as he figures out his relationship with Marcus. It means I'm going to prioritize my own emotional health for a while. Are you cutting us off? Dad's voice was panicked. No, but I'm not going to be the family glue anymore. You guys are going to have to learn how to have relationships with each other without me managing the emotional labor. Jake cleared his throat. Actually, I have something I need to say about that. I called Rebecca's parents yesterday and told them the truth about why Sarah wasn't at the engagement party. I told them that I'd convinced everyone Sarah was problematic when actually I was dealing with my own issues and took it out on her. I stared at him. You told Rebecca's family? I told them that my sister is actually the most emotionally intelligent person in our family and that excluding her was a mistake based on my own insecurities. I told them that any future family events need to include you, and that if they have concerns about family dynamics, they should talk to me, not about you. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Jake had risked his future in-laws' opinion of him to restore my reputation. For the first time in our lives, he'd chosen my well-being over his own image management. I also talked to Marcus again yesterday, Jake continued. I told him about you and he wants to meet you too. He said he'd always wondered about Robert's kids and whether you knew about him. He said he hopes this whole situation brings our family closer together, instead of tearing it apart. That broke something loose in me. The idea that this stranger, this man who'd been written out of our story, was hoping for our healing instead of harboring resentment. It was more grace than I'd expected from anyone. There's one more thing, Jake said. I'm postponing the wedding until fall, but when we do get married, I want you to be my best person. Not best man, best person. You're the one who's been honest when I needed to hear truth, even when I didn't want to listen. You're the one who sees situations clearly. I want you standing next to me when I marry Rebecca. I absolutely lost it then. Full ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe and your face gets all blotchy. Because after 28 years of being the sister who wasn't quite enough, Jake was asking me to be the most important person at his wedding. Yes, I managed to choke out. But I get to give a speech and I'm going to tell embarrassing stories about you. I would expect nothing less. 3 months later, Jake and Marcus had developed a relationship that was cautious but genuine. Jake was learning that he could love two fathers without betraying either one. Mom and Dad were in therapy, working through the guilt and communication patterns that had shaped our family. Rebecca and Jake had rescheduled their wedding for October. Jake's whole family was there, all of Rebecca's family, and this woman just destroyed everything. Have you talked to Jake? He won't talk to anyone. He just keeps saying this explains everything, and now he understands why he never felt like he belonged. Sarah, I'm scared. I don't know what this means for us for our future. How do you build a marriage on lies? I was scared too, but not for the reasons Rebecca was. I was scared because part of me felt vindicated. But I get to give a speech and I'm going to tell embarrassing stories about you. I would expect nothing less. 3 months later, Jake and Marcus had developed a relationship that was cautious but genuine. Jake was learning that he could love two fathers without betraying either one. Mom and Dad were in therapy working through the guilt and communication patterns that had shaped our family. Rebecca and Jake had rescheduled their wedding for October. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not crazy for questioning family dynamics that don't make sense. Subscribe for more real-life drama and family justice stories, because trust me, this is just the beginning of the wild family tales I have to share. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the family that's meant for you is the one that's willing to grow and change and tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up for you when the lies fall away and the real work begins.